When's the last time you were curious about something? I mean really curious about something.
Haven't identified that woman, but today we did get our first look at her face, and police are hoping someone can help them find her family. Now take a look at this video. You can see the sketch of the woman the police gave us just a short time ago. We're told she's about 50 years old, curly gray hair, and a full set of teeth. Now her head was found 10 days ago in some woods just off Mason Road near Ridge Road Extension in Economy.
It's obvious to all of us that somebody intervened at some point, whether just prior to burial, transportation, or after.
What is a body broker? A body broker is a company. It is a company that takes part of your body, your whole body, your bodily fluids, after you die. What's the difference between a body broker and an organ transplant? An organ transplant is taken from a live person or a person who has just died, and it is donated to another individual. A body broker takes your whole body. They give you no money for this, and they then in turn sell your whole body or pieces of your body for training, medical research to an organization like a medical school or a mortuary science program. This is all completely legal. If you donate an organ for transplant, you cannot receive any payment for that. It is illegal in the United States. Now, the cost of your surgery can be paid. However, you cannot receive 1 cent of compensation for donating an organ. So, in other words, I can't sell my kidney. I can't pay someone else for their kidney in the United States. Who are some body brokers? Well, one major body broker in the United States is called MedCure. MedCure has a really large office in the state of Oregon, and they've recently fallen under scrutiny from the FBI. We don't know why, but the FBI on November 2nd raided MedCure's facilities and took many records. The FBI has not released any findings from their investigation as of yet, and they have only made a press release stating that they cannot comment on a criminal investigation. MedCure has gone on record as saying that they are looking forward to cooperating with the FBI, and their website has since changed to reassure the donors that they are in full compliance with all federal and state statutes and regulations. What are some other kind of body brokers? Believe it or not, your local blood bank is a body broker. You donate your very valuable blood and or plasma to them. They pay you no money for this, and they then provide that blood for various reasons, research, and also direct use in hospitals. But they do in fact receive compensation for your blood. Also other bodily fluids, semen and so forth. That is a type of body brokering. However, that is normally done through hospitals for fertility reasons. And sometimes you can get compensated for donating semen. It is not considered a tissue or a bone or an organ. So why do I care? I care because they released some further information about our Jane Doe. That the way that the skull was separated from the spinal cord was done in such a way to suggest that it came from such a facility. So I began to get interested in this new world to me of body brokering. People that legally collect your body and sell the pieces. So I've been thinking of it, not to be indelicate, as if I take my car to the junkyard. Most cars that go to the junkyard can't get there under their own power. The car is dead. And often the junkyard basically takes the car off of your hands. They may or may not give you any money for that. Usually they do not. However, what they do after they get the car is they rarely sell a whole dead car. They divide it up into sometimes hundreds of different pieces. So the car that they got basically for free, for the cost of transport, they can sell the radiator, the windshields, the electronics, the seats, the exterior body panels, wheels and tires, exhaust components. They can make many, many thousands of dollars off of the car that you donated to them. So if you think of a body broker that way, you would be on base to the general concept of how it works. Now, when everything goes like a donor expects, yes, your spine teaches spinal surgeons, sometimes maybe dozens of them, how to do spinal surgery without having to practice on a live body. The same goes with any other part of the body, brains, different organs, heart transplants. They can learn all of those things from donated parts. Now, the body brokers, they treat the parts as assets. Like they'll actually assign dollar value to a complete human spine, many, many thousands of dollars. And they also have them insured in case of fire or theft. So we're going to talk to someone who had some experience with a body broker. I ran across this story on the internet in just a comment, really, and I contacted this family because it seemed like a pretty compelling story of when things go wrong in the whole body donation process. Now, bear with me. There's a restaurant nearby me, and everybody flocks to it. The outside of this restaurant, the entrance itself and the whole front of the restaurant looks like shit. It is beat up. It needs painted. There's like a storage room that has a picture window in the front of the restaurant that you can see all of their crap. But yet people line up to go in there and eat, and they rave about the food. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not eating there. I see what's going in. I see what I see when I'm going in. And those are the things that they're proud of. I don't even want to know what's going on in the kitchen. I don't want to know the output of this place. Okay. Now, the intake of MedCure, you're going to hear from this story in a great many cases that have been documented and commented on the internet. There are many really disturbing stories about the body donation process and that it can go very wrong. There are also a lot of stories where everything was as expected. But one thing's for sure, we don't know what happens to this stuff after we donate it. We assume that it's put to good use. We assume all that. But, people say you can't judge a book by its cover. And the cover of this story that you're going to hear is pretty bad. Okay? And I am going to judge a book by its cover. Just like that restaurant. I'm not eating there. I've decided to judge that book by its cover, and I'm judging this book by its cover as well. But you judge for yourself.
He was the best. And I know many people say that about their dads, but my dad was kind. He was loving. He was generous. He had so many friends you can't even count them.
And it was yourself and your brother, or did he have more children?
I have two brothers, and I have a younger sister that was adopted. We had several foster children that came and lived with us at different times, at least 7 of them. My parents were just very, very kind and very generous with their love and their time.
So your dad got sick. What happened?
Yes. Well, it's been a rough year. I would say about a year ago, we started noticing, we've been noticing for a while some changes with my dad, but about a year ago, it was getting a little more apparent. And my mom was also going to have surgery. She had surgery on January 16th of last year, a very serious surgery. And right around the same time, my dad had a stroke.
Of 2017 or 2016?
2017.
Okay.
Yes. And it was right around a year ago that they had looked into the company called MedCure.
Now,
for.
what if you don't mind me asking, it seems that your dad had a particular interest in donating his whole body. Was there some significance to that? Some relation to something that happened to a loved one, or it's something that he had been reading about, or what led him to go that path?
I would say there was probably an interest in giving back, because when I was 11, I had a very serious spinal infection that almost killed me and almost paralyzed me, but it didn't. I was in the hospital for about 2.5 months, and my parents were always by my side. My dad was there on the weekends, my mom there during the week. And I know that, we've had some other challenging medical issues within our family, and my parents were, very grateful at the time for, of course, for me making it through what I did. And, like I said, they just were very generous. This was something they had talked about for a long time, citing the backs of their driver's license, the organ donation, and they were very interested in giving that way.
And do you feel like they had a pretty good basic understanding of how the process would work at that time when they made that decision?
I believe they did. I believe they understood that it was to help science, to help further studies. My dad, they thought that he may have had Huntington's disease, and he was never tested for that, but they had thought that maybe he had that. They did diagnose him with chorea. He thought that maybe, by donating, they could look into that. They could, help further the studies for Huntington's disease.
My understanding is that at some point, yourself, your brother, or one of your parents found out about a company called MedCure, which is a whole body donation company, and contacted them. How did that all come about?
I believe that they saw some ads or found some information about MedCure. They had called probably about a year ago, maybe a little earlier in January, a year ago, 2017, and gotten some information from MedCure. MedCure sent them a letter. They signed up. They received cards in the mail. When my mom was going in for her surgery, she gave me both her and my dad's cards for MedCure. And my brothers and I, should have looked more into it, but we didn't. We just trusted that they had gotten the information and they were happy with this, and this is what they were choosing to do.
And what does the card say that they sent to your parents?
The cards basically just said that, it just had their name on it. It said that they had decided to donate their bodies to MedCure and had a phone number to call if something were to progress further with their health.
Okay. And at that time, when you found out that they had made that decision, how did you feel about it?
I thought it was very generous. I knew this was something that they wanted to do.
Sure.
And I, trusted that this was a good company.
And if everything went the way that you think it should have after your father passed, how did you see things going? Or did you just think, well, there's a process, I'll step through the process with this company. Did you have a general understanding of how it would all go down?
I knew that my brother had, when my father was progressing further and he was continuing to decline, I knew that my brother had sat with my mom back in March and completed all the paperwork and the authorization forms and mailed them in at that time. I knew that the hospice nurse was supposed to call as my father was passing away, which she did, and let them know that he was passing away.
Okay.
So,
and when your dad was in the hospice, and I'm sorry, what was your father's first name?
Jack.
Oh, Jack. Okay. To your knowledge, were you or your brother or any of your other siblings approached by any other donation companies at that time when he was in the hospice? No. So you told me what you thought was going to happen. What really happened?
So what really happened was on April 17th, the hospice nurse called MedCure to make sure that everything was in order. The representative from MedCure said that she needed more information, so she spoke with my mother for quite a while, and when that got too difficult, my brother took the phone and finished the conversation about my father's family, military, and health history. And they were on the phone for, I would say, at least 45 minutes. As my brother hung up, he was assured that everything would be ready upon my father's death.
And at this time, Jackie, your father was dying.
He was close.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So he was assured that the process of transferring my father's body to the funeral home and then ultimately to MedCure would go smoothly.
Okay.
So
you thought that, what you wanted to happen was you wanted your father, after he passed, to be taken to a funeral home, or was that something they wanted so that they had it somewhere to transport your father from?
That's how it works with MedCure. The body would first go to a funeral home. They would then do the required forms needed to transport across state lines, and that in order to transport the body to MedCure, to a MedCure facility.
Okay. And
so
it was your understanding that they would be flying it back to Oregon, which is the MedCure headquarters, or didn't you know?
We thought that first, but what happened was my father passed away around 2 o'clock in the morning on the 18th. Around 3 o'clock, the hospice nurse came in, pronounced his death, and called MedCure. The representative on the phone kind of posed her with some questions or some issues that needed our answers to them, I guess.
And what kinds of answers did they need at that point?
Well, they, after she spoke with them and told them, I guess they called her back on her phone, and that's when she put the phone on speaker. And the representative from MedCure, in a very nonchalantly voice, said that the funeral home that is in our area that they contract with was unable to pick up my father's body.
Ever.
In fact, they could come, but it would be much later in the day, which would have been too long of a time to preserve my father's body.
Okay.
In order for him to be used for donation.
I see.
So he said that he could call some of the local funeral homes in the area, but there would be an extra cost to that.
That they would call But you would be charged in
Right.
that scenario. Okay.
Right. Now, it's kind of important to know that this wasn't because my parents weren't doing this whole body donation, because they were limited on funds. They were doing it in order to give, to be generous and give of their bodies for science.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a cost thing. So we said, okay, if you can find a funeral home closer to us, more local to us, that would be fine. So he hung up the phone and he called back and he said, okay, I found a local funeral home, and what I did was I was striking a deal with them. And that's literally what he said. And he repeated that phrase several times.
Well, to your knowledge,
what
kind of deal was he striking?
Regarding the cost is what I'm guessing.
Okay, the cost that you would have to pay. Right.
Right. And to use that phrase within hours of our father's passing in front of my mom, my brother, and I, he's going to strike a deal with the funeral home to come and get our father's body. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said that the funeral home that he found would come and transport my father's body to their facility in about an hour. Well, they were there in within 20 minutes, and they were so kind and so considerate and had so much more compassion than we had heard at all from Medcure.
Sure.
So they took my father's body from his house, and we believed that everything was in order for donation through Medcure. The representative had said that, that was early Tuesday morning. He said that on Wednesday my father's body would be transported to their facility, Medcure's facility, in St. Louis, Missouri.
So Tuesday is when your father passed, and your understanding was that by Wednesday, Jack would be on his way to Medcure.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
What really happened?
Late in the evening on Friday, the 21st.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now it's Friday.
Now it's Friday.
Okay.
Late in the evening, my mother received a call from someone at Medcure who rudely told her that they didn't receive all the information they requested and that the paperwork needed to be completed and faxed back immediately, or they wouldn't be able to transport my father. Now, during this time, we thought my father was already there.
Right. And this is all the same information, the military history, the health history, things of that nature that you already had provided at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 18th.
Actually, it had all been provided on the phone during that 45-minute conversation on the 17th. And it had already been provided to them back in March as well.
So back in March, and then on April 17th, which was the day before your father's passing, correct. And then again after he passed, and now 3 days
later.
Now
they're saying that they never received the information that they needed.
And this was a totally different person you were dealing with now at Medcure.
Correct.
Okay.
This was a different person that called and basically berated my mother. For not having the paperwork.
Did you send it again?
Telling her that it needed to be completed immediately and faxed back to them. Well, my mom doesn't have a fax machine in her home. I don't know too many people that do.
Right.
So, my mom called my brother called me, and we decided, forget it.
Enough.
We're not using Medcure. This is enough. We've had enough. So my mother was also very distraught because she didn't know where my father was. And the representative told my mother, well, he must be still at the funeral home. So during those days, though, from the 18th through Friday, the funeral home had called MedCure every day to get the information that they needed in order to complete the paperwork needed to transport him across state lines and for the death certificate. And MedCure never called them back. My brother had also called MedCure on Wednesday and Thursday asking, is my father's body there? What's happening now? The lady that he spoke with said, I'll have to have somebody call you back. And nobody ever called my brother back either.
So if you had to pick one word at that stage of what was happening, that you just found out that your father was at the funeral home and he had been there for several days, no one had bothered telling you. You thought your father was, basically, had already been at the donation facility. If you had to pick one word to describe how you felt at that moment, what do you think it would be?
Just devastated.
Yeah.
Just devastated. And the funeral home was contracted through MedCure, so they couldn't call us either. Their contract was through MedCure.
Right.
I called the funeral home on that Friday night, and the funeral director called me back immediately and said, it's okay, your father is still with us, he's still in our care. Because we also weren't quite sure where he was.
Right. Right.
So on Saturday morning, my brother and I went to the funeral home and signed all the paperwork to have my father appropriately cremated at that point.
And after that, did you initiate any further calls to MedCure?
I did not.
But they continued to call you, didn't they?
They continued to call my mother, and they continued to call the funeral home.
As if they had no idea of what was going on.
Right.
Let me shift gears for a second, and we're gonna get back to that part of the story. You are aware, are you not, that the FBI raided MedCure's headquarters and they removed a large portion of their records.
Yes, I just found that out 2 days ago.
And the FBI hasn't yet said anything about their reasons for doing that, and they also haven't charged MedCure with anything yet.
Right.
Now, you read some of the articles that were out there about that story, as did I. I have to think that after you read that, you might have been, even though it went so wrong, were you a little relieved that your father didn't end up there?
Oh, yes, I was. I read this quote not too long ago because this had been just hanging on me. It's just, this was my father's wish. This was what he wanted to do, and he didn't get to do that. And it was heartbreaking and devastating. But I read this quote the other day that said the hardest thing about everything happens for a reason is waiting for that reason to show up.
Right.
And that is so true. And 2 days ago, when I read that and I sent that to my brothers, we all just breathed a huge sigh of relief and thank God.
Yeah, wow.
Thank
Right.
God. And then I started thinking about all the people that do have family members there.
Sure.
And how devastating this must be to them to
Right.
wonder what's going on now.
Right. And nobody really knows, which I think is really unfortunate that they haven't said anything, because it really doesn't matter what the problem is over there. Any kind of problem is going to be devastating for the families that had loved ones donated, because whatever it is, it's not going to be good.
No, it's not.
You know. Your father was cremated. You were able to.
We had a beautiful celebration of life for him at a church, and just wall-to-wall people, standing room only.
Wow.
It was just a beautiful service, for just this wonderful, kind man.
Wow.
Very smart businessman, and just to think of him being treated like a book on a shelf.
Sure.
The way he was was devastating. So, after that, I started doing more research, and I started looking into Medcure more, and looking onto reviews and Facebook reviews, and other reviews that we found through other websites. And I noticed on Facebook that there were other heartbreaking stories that were similar to ours, but different, about receiving ashes back. They weren't sure that they were actually from their loved one, and they were several months after they were told they were going to receive them, about Medcure calling families and using wrong names when they would call them, and we added our story to that as well. And not too long after our story was added, they deleted all of those stories from their Facebook page.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
So you won't find a single derogatory story about Medcure on their Facebook page. And if you look into the Glassdoor, from people that have worked there, there's words used there like terrible and nightmare and stay away.
Right.
It's horrifying. And it just really was, at that time, of course, it's before this happened, we just kept thinking, what kind of company is this? We should have done our homework. We should have been looking more into this. My mother was feeling horrible and horrified that, she was also signed up and is not any longer. I also wrote letters to the 3 state departments, the American Association of Tissue Banks, the Department of Health in New York State, and the Oregon Health Authority. They're all accrediting Medcure on their website. So I wrote a letter to each one of them and did correspond with them as well.
Good for you.
So, I received, I received a phone call from someone from the New York State Department of Health and told them our story and what happened. They were investigating Medcure, as well as the AATD.
Jackie, why do you think that a large company like Medcure, who is in the industry that they're in, if you had to guess, how do you think they get away with dissatisfying so many people?
I don't know. That's what I couldn't understand, I couldn't understand how they could do what they do, and it's got to be money generated or something, because with so many dissatisfied people in the business that they're in, they deal with human bodies, not a product or service.
Right.
So
they take something that they get that's probably one of the most valuable things on earth, right?
From many generous people.
Yes, they acquire it for free, and then what do they do with it after that? They sell it.
Right.
They sell it. So I think sometimes, I've thought a lot about this story and about what happened with your father, Jack, and I think a lot of times people don't want to see things that are wrong at the end of life. They don't want to think about what could be going wrong, and things that may be done that aren't completely above board and that are disrespectful, and they instinctively turn their eyes away. And I think what's remarkable about you is that you could have just torn up your mother's donation card and just shook your head and moved on, but you didn't do that. You've
other people
you've had a voice
through this devastation.
That's right.
Right.
I really admire that. I think
Thank you.
You probably helped a lot of people by some of the writing that you've done on the subject, and that's how I stumbled across your story about your departed father. If you were out, Jackie, and you heard a stranger discussing that they might be interested in donating their body to science, what would you say to them?
I would tell them to go to a local medical college, not through a company like MedCure or some of the other biotech. I'm not sure all the names of them, but go to a local medical college if that's what you want. A hospital, Rush, or what's the one in Minnesota? A big name hospital. And if that's what you want to do, if you want to be that generous, go about it that way. Don't go through a body broker like this.
Because you still believe in the merits of whole body donation for the furthering of research.
I do.
Well, I really admire the action that you've taken, and I'm also equally disturbed by what happened in your father's case, and I'm very sorry for his passing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that's a good place to end the interview, and if you ever need to get in touch with me about anything else, please feel free to do so.
I did receive a letter. I don't know, if this is much of anything, but I was sitting here going through some of my things preparing for your interview here, and I reread this letter that I received from the Oregon Health Authority, and I don't think I fully read past everything, other than the way it starts out, that it says the office has investigated your complaint that you filed, and based on the information, we were unable to identify violations of the Oregon administrative rules for non-transplant anatomical research recovery that were related to the complaint. But it goes on, and it says, I understand that this may be disappointing to you. Please do not view this outcome as a minimization of your complaint, or that the information you provided was in any way lacking in merit. I would also share with you that it is our experience that regardless of whether or not we were able to substantiate a complaint, the investigation process often results in the facility's identification of improvements it can make in its systems to provide the best care possible. Based on the information gathered during the on-site investigation, we were able to identify a violation of the Oregon administrative rules for non-transplant anatomical research recovery that was unrelated to the complaint. We are very appreciative that you brought your concerns to our attention. So that was back on August 30th.
So that was about 6 months ago, or 5 months after your father passed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you reporting your concerns allowed them to find a separate violation.
Right. So I know the Oregon Health Authority investigated them along with the American Association of Tissue Banks and the New York State Department of Health. So there was investigations launched due to my complaint, thank God.
Agreed.
Don't know if it led up to this, if it did or didn't. Whatever they find now is just truly disturbing.
Well, I'll be keeping an eye out for any results of the investigation that they're doing now, and I'll be sure to share with you anything that I find out.
The Mason Road Podcast is written and produced by me. Music is courtesy of bensounds.com and closing theme by Dale Madonna.